Hello and welcome to Talking Local. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Paul Stinemetz, the President and CEO of Endlessrise. Endlessrise is a leading white label online marketing outsourcing business based in the Philippines. They were founded in 2009 and they now have over 300 staff members based in the Philippines, where Paul works, lives and breathes the outsourcing market. Here at BrightLocal, we have a pretty big offshore operation also based in the Philippines. The process of setting up and managing that offshore operation has been, say, one of the most challenging, but also the most rewarding for us. But my knowledge about setting up and managing, an offshore operation, my knowledge in doing that barely scratches the surface of Paul's know-how, which is why I'm talking to Paul today. Over the next 20 minutes, I want to understand about the challenges, the advantages, and also the pitfalls of running an outsourced and offshore operation. So, if you're thinking of hiring, say, a virtual assistant, or setting up your own offshore operation, or even just considering using an outsourced company, then you can learn a lot from this man today. So, Paul, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Miles. Happy to be on.
Great, thanks, Paul. Before we start kind of going deep into the logistics of offshoring and outsourcing, can you tell us a little more about Endlessrise, what you do there, and also the journey that you've been on over the last 5 years?
Sure thing. Thanks, Miles. Well, I started out in online marketing because I was going to college for biochemistry and decided to try to figure out a way to produce a reoccurring income structure for myself. And I actually moved to Puerto Rico because I wanted to go surfing there, and I started my own online marketing company. So I started contracting companies out of India to do the work, and this was 5 years ago, so the online marketing reseller structure was not set up, and it ended up being a disaster. I was put into a situation to where I either build our own team, stateside, or I produce an outsource entity, and I realized that there was such a need for a legitimate outsourcing program that was exclusively white labeled to resellers that I should pursue that opportunity. So what I did was I picked up everything and I moved myself and my small crew over to the Philippines, and I set up a small operation to start with. And because we were exclusively servicing resellers, we started to grow exponentially because a reseller has clients and they bring on more clients and we bring on more resellers. And over the last 5 years, it went from 10 employees to 300 employees, and it's been a real wild ride. So that's just the very short version on how I got over here and how things got set up. How we went from 10 employees to 300 employees, that's a different story.
That's great. I love hearing about the kind of backgrounds to businesses and how they often grow from a kind of simple idea or the lack of a service that meets your needs. It's also a great way to kind of start a business based off knowing what you need and therefore what other people are likely to also need. And so, Paul, then you're also based in the Philippines. We've got an operation in the Philippines as well, and I really do like kind of coming over there and kind of working with the Philippines. But why do you choose the Philippines, and why do you think it's such a growth area for outsourcing and offshoring? And how does it compare to, say, India, which is also another large outsourcing destination?
Well, whenever it comes to outsourcing, or we call it BPO, business process outsourcing, as an industry, it starts with labor rates. So that's one of the reasons why a lot of people come over here to set up an outsourcing firm, is because the labor rates are good. You save a lot of money, and it's on par about with India on terms of labor rates. So that's one of the main reasons why people set up over here and why we set up over here. But of all the countries that would have similar labor rates, the reason why we chose the Philippines, personally, one of the main reasons why I chose it was because of the culture. Outside of the rates, then you're talking about the people. The culture here is very Western. It's surprising how Western it is since World War II, really. The English language here is the #1 necessity for us because we handle a lot of writing and also phone support. It's a real hot spot for call centers as well because of the English language that's over here. In fact, the average speaking talent of English over here per person is much better than it was when I was in Puerto Rico, which is part of the States. So people learn English from the time they're in kindergarten on up. The Western culture is very strong over here, which means that you know, American and even music from the UK and the movies and the television is really popular, and that really helps to hone English skills. And of course, the writing is taught from kindergarten on up. Also, Tagalog, which is the native language over here, is based on the Latin alphabet, which is the same alphabet as English. So it's a lot easier to learn from Tagalog to English in writing because it's based on the same alphabet. Whereas if you were to try to learn Spanish, it would be easy for you because it's based on the same alphabet. If you're going to go and learn Chinese, it's going to be much, much more difficult. So in regards to setting up over here versus India, India's native language is not based on the Latin alphabet, and it makes learning and writing English much more difficult. I think that's one of the reasons why you get better writers over here. So without a doubt, writing skills over here is much better. Spoken English over here is much better. There's a big trend over here of Indian call centers setting up and BPOing out to the Philippines. So you get Americans and people from the UK outsourcing to a BPO in India for call center talent, and they are in turn BPOing out to the Philippines. And I'm seeing actually a lot of Indian call centers setting up over here. So if you want to look at the trend in terms of English skills, it's not debatable. This is the #1 place. In terms of the culture, I think it's probably one of the happiest cultures that I've ever been around. Everybody seems to be very happy here, very accepting here. When I first moved over here, the president was female, so it's a very liberal culture at the same time, a very accepting culture. Work ethic-wise, there's there's a very hard work ethic. People are very family-oriented, very geared towards taking care of their families. Siblings are responsible for putting their other brothers and sisters through college and taking care of their parents. So work ethic is extremely hard. And there's less holidays than there is in India, so that's also a benefit. Yeah. So all wrapped up into one. That's why we set up over here, and it is fairly friendly to set up a foreign corporation over here at the same time. Some countries you cannot own a foreign corporation as a 99.99999% shareholder, which leaves you vulnerable having to share 40% of shares to someone who is from the country that you're trying to incorporate in. In the Philippines, you can own 99.99999% of your corporation, which also was a big reason why we chose to set up over here.
That's very interesting. I totally agree about the kind of culture there. From our experience, we've found everyone to be very hardworking, very friendly, and it's interesting about the kind of very family-oriented society where you could have one person working for your business, and the salary you pay them to actually support 5 or 6 people within their family. I think that works well in 2 ways. One, it's very positive for that family to have a good secure income, and also it means that you get a very loyal kind of employee base, because it's not just themselves that they're funding through working for you, it's also their extended family, which kind of keeps them kind of hooked into you, which I found has been a great way for us to kind of retain staff, just to kind of really look after them. In terms of kind of recruiting of staff over there, what skills and traits do you look for in a kind of ideal employee when you want to kind of bring them on?
What skills and traits do we look for? Interestingly, first of all, if we see on someone's background that they did a lot of freelance work, maybe they were working from home, working off a freelancer, Odesk, or something like that, that's a big red flag. We usually don't hire people that come from there because they're used to a work from home environment. They're not used to a structured office environment. So that's probably a big surprise to a lot of people, because a lot of people are out there looking to hire the people on Odesk and Freelancer, but we don't hire them. And in my opinion, the best employees that you will find do not work off of those sites. The traits that we look for are work ethic is what we're looking for. We're looking for people that don't bounce around from job to job. We're looking for people, depending on the position, we're looking for people. At the more technical the position, of course, we're going to look for more technical expertise. If it's more of a non-technical position, we're looking for fresh grads out of college. For fresh grads out of college, we recruit from specific colleges over here that we know that produce great employees. The Philippines is not a first world country, so you do not have first world education over here. So the difference from one college to another college to another college is not what it is in the UK or Australia or the States or Canada. It's dramatically different. I mean, the difference between actually needing to do your homework and get graded on it and not needing to do your homework and get graded on it. So we know what colleges to hire from. That's a big one. It's really difficult in an interview to pick up on work ethic traits, but we always ask the right questions. In interviewing, it's a skill. You ask them, first of all, we like to ask people if they're lucky. It lets us know their disposition in life, if they're a positive person or a negative person. We always ask them if they're lucky. If they say yes, they pass that test. Then we always ask them different situations in terms of how do you get along with other employees. That's one of the things that we focus on the most when we're looking to profile them if they have the technical skills, because if they don't get along with their coworkers, then we can't have a good culture, and it only takes one bad egg in a department to ruin the culture that's encompassing of it. So that's really the broad question around things. I'm not sure, Miles, were you wanting me to address how we recruit people?
No, that's great. I wanted to just understand, how it might differ from, so recruiting, kind of in the UK or in the US. But no, that's great. I understand that, it's interesting to talk about how there's such differences in the kind of education standards from college to college, and also the fact that you don't look for people who might have relevant experience, but if it's based from home, because they don't have that kind of, like you said, sort of structured office background. So that's really interesting, Paul. How important and how time consuming is the management aspect of this? Because imagine you put yourself in the shoes of someone like myself, and with someone else who's looking to maybe set up an offshore operation. Yes, you can get guys to do the jobs, but there's always a concern about the kind of quality, the kind of time management, kind of aspects of keeping them kind of involved in doing it, and that can be quite time consuming. And so, how much of a kind of management sort of structure and layer do you put around your kind of base teams that you've got there?
Oh, a lot. It'd surprise you. What you have to understand about any service-based operations, and you understand it a lot more as you get bigger, it costs you more money as you scale. If you're running a 10-person operation, per quantity of employees per service, it's a lot cheaper than if you're running a 100-man operation, because you have to start factoring in more management. We're structured in that each team has a team lead, and then it has a supervisor, and then we have a manager. Out of 300 employees, we have 32 managers. So we have a management committee. On top of that, we have shift managers that manage the shifts and the attendance and the infractions. And then on top of that, of course, we have our entire HR. For a small business to relate to us, it's a little bit different, but everything from us comes from the HR tier down. So as you get bigger and bigger, at some point in time, you're going to need an HR manager, and that's going to dictate all the training for all of the management that you have inside of your company. So we go from our HR director down. We actually employed the former international HR director from DHL, and then we have below her, we have our management committee. And then below that, there's all of the managers. Now, from the managers to the team themselves, the managers are responsible for making sure that people are on time. They're responsible for quality control on the work. They're responsible for making sure that the work is completed, and they're responsible for creating training materials, maintaining training materials, and training new hires. They're also responsible for screening new applicants, hiring new applicants, and firing non-performers. They're also, excuse me. They're also responsible for establishing KPIs on their team. So if you're going to run a team, how do you track them? If you have a team that's responsible for writing, well, how do you track how much they're supposed to get done each day on grading them on their performance? So managers are responsible for establishing key performance indicators, in other words, tracking the performance of each employee. They're responsible for in the very beginning, monthly evaluations, annual evaluations, and performance check-in evaluations with the employees. They also have to do one-on-one check-ins, and they coach them on their attendance. So management is extremely time-consuming in a larger operation.
You mentioned there a second ago about the kind of firing of staff, and or kind of letting those go who don't perform. Are you quite ruthless in terms of how you appraise, grade, and retain, or let staff go?
Personally, yes, extremely. My personal viewpoints on it are not what's practiced in this company. We follow the Filipino laws. There's very strict laws on letting employees go over here, and I follow our HR director's disposition on that. I don't handle it. If an employee is not performing, then we put them on a performance improvement plan. We tell them how much time they have to hit different marks on improvement, or else they would be terminated. So we always put people on a performance improvement plan if they are not performing, and we give them a chance, and we make sure that we communicate that to them very, very clearly. In terms of everything else that can let you go from the company outside of performance, there's an entire user manual. You have to stack up your infractions. You're suspended once, you're suspended twice, and then you're let go. So we're actually very, very gracious with how we deal with employees on giving them a second and third chance before we let them go.
Okay, I guess that's probably a little bit different when you've got kind of contracted employees to say, employing an outsourcer who is essentially a freelance contractor to you. Do the same rules and laws apply with that kind of setup, or is it only when you've got your kind of permanently contracted staff?
Well, as the laws apply, whenever people go on Freelancer and Odesk to hire people from the Philippines, that's not legal, believe it or not. So, but as it is as a contracted staff, let's say that it was done the right way and that contractor actually has their contractor's license and they document with their receipts to you what they're being paid and they pay their taxes on it, in that sort of a situation, there should be an official contract in place, right? And you should follow the terms of that contract. And so if that contract states that you can let them go at any point in time, then upon non-performance, you could cut them on the spot if you wanted to, absolutely. And I would if those were the terms, absolutely. As soon as they're not performing, I would cut them. Typically in an outsourcing relationship with Odesk or Freelancer or whatnot, the process of letting them go is usually really quick, and usually there is no official contract in place stating their KPIs or how to measure them. So it's all very informal, which is also what makes it difficult to scale.
Yeah, so I guess you've got that, that kind of informality, which is the benefits of being kind of easier to sort of set up, easier and more nimble to manage should you need to kind of downscale it. But you probably haven't got, the kind of, I guess, the kind of longevity of contracts and the ability to kind of scale based on that. So I guess it's an interesting kind of, kind of watershed for people to decide which way they want to go. How do you keep staff motivated and loyal? How big is money the key factor there? Or are they typically interested in lots of other benefits? Given that they live in quite a kind of family-orientated culture, do they look for things like kind of medical benefits and healthcare, or is it really just about the money?
That's a very good question. The money needs to be on par, ballpark range, right? But and the short answer to that is absolutely not. It's not all about the money. In our office, well, it has a lot to do with benefits. It really does. The same thing with you if you were wanting to get a job, especially if you had a family. We provide health care to our employees. We provide a career path to them. But benefits are a big deal. How much vacation leave do they get? How much sick leave credits do they get? How much, what's their health care plan that they're getting? What's their annual bonus that they're going to be getting? Those things are extremely important to them as the benefits that they can look forward to. In terms of what motivates them, we give our each department each year has an annual team building that we put them on. Depending on the team, depending on their performance, they might go out for a dinner. Our teams have done different things, from load up on a bus and go out to the beach and spend a weekend in hotels on the beach. We do that for our entire teams at a time. They look forward to their team buildings a lot. Once a year we have a really big company team building where we pull all the employees together and have that team building. We have regular company in-house events, so people dress up on Halloween. We have Christmas gift exchanges. There's a lot of work that comes from the HR division in terms of how to keep your employees motivated on a regular basis. It could be small things, it could be big things, but the culture that you create inside of your company is going to be your largest factor on retaining your employees for the Philippines.
And as your company grows, how important is it to kind of put in place kind of processes to kind of optimize and kind of keep standards the same? And do you see that there's an ability to sort of substitute certain roles by investing in kind of technology and systems? And how much of your effort is spent on managing people, and how much of it is spent on sort of thinking about how you could say automate a process that's currently done by a human?
This is probably what sets us apart for a lot of people. I mean, we have a large in-house development team. We place the majority of all of our emphasis on the people and training people on processes. One of the reasons is because if you think about it, if you look back to SE Nuke and some of the biggest SEO automation platforms in existence for doing the actual work, they're all outdated. You know what I mean? If you were relying on that as a business, you'd be out of business. The online marketing industry moves so fast that if you're trying to keep up with platforms to automate all of your processes in depth, you're not going to be able to keep up. So we focus on manpower processes and keeping our systems flexible, but we do place probably about 15% emphasis in automating the most redundant tasks that we have that are there. But the vast majority of it is people, training, and processes, absolutely.
What communication tools do you use to kind of keep in touch with your employees or to kind of keep them engaged? Do you use Skype, for example? Do you use Hangouts? Do you use videos? Or is it just sort of simply email based or any kind of internal chat systems?
Well, of course, to keep our employees engaged, we actually don't have a single employee that works from home, and we don't have a single part-time employee. So everyone is we're in a high-rise in 3 offices, so everyone's in-house. So everyone's face-to-face. In terms of keeping them together, we have an employee portal, so we give company updates in there. I personally do company updates on what's new with the company, and we load it in and broadcast it out to everyone's desktops. Each team has their own chat platform that they can have chat sessions in, but since we're in person, everything's in person, so that's how we keep engaged and face-to-face. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's a little bit different for you, based in the UK, but having a Philippines team. We rely on Skype and Hangout, as well as a thing called Slack chat, as the kind of 3 main communication routes. But yeah, I think you definitely have to work a lot harder when you're not sort of physically sort of face to face with your employees. So I've just got 2 more questions for you, Paul. Imagine a friend of yours, say back in the States, was looking to potentially set up an offshore operation. What sort of advice would you give them about building their own team? If you could look back at maybe the things that you've learned as a good friend of yours, giving some genuine advice, what would say the 3 things that you would say to them?
Well, first I'd say don't do it. But if they were set on it 100%, my advice would be to make sure that you seek really good legal and accounting advice when you're setting up. There's a lot of international tax treaties, and that you start off with a really strong HR director and a really strong in-house recruitment department, and really educate yourself. In terms of the difficulties in setting up your own operation, I think it's fairly significant. Miles, you've set up your own. You need to fly over here. You need to make trips over here. You need to put a lot of time and effort into it. You need to scale it. I think you have to have a really strong reason on why you would come and set it up. A lot of people, when they're setting up international teams, fail, and the reason why they fail is the same reason why you would fail if you set up a restaurant in your own local city and you never went into the restaurant and you sat from home and you relied on other people to run it. It's just running things remotely is very difficult to do. Endlessrise would never have made it if I wasn't over here on site working 24/7 on it. You'd have to have really good skills in being able to retain people, and you'd have to have the right people from the beginning to maintain that company, create that culture, and make sure everything's running smooth. When you're dealing with a culture that money is not the largest priority, having things fall apart, it can happen very quickly.
Okay, Paul, that's great. Actually, I don't have any more questions. That's been really helpful. So, thanks again for taking part. Really, really appreciate you taking the time. Actually, what time is it over there?
It's currently 10:40 p.m.
10:40 p.m. So yeah, so you're burning the candle at both ends, I'm sure. Well, listen, Paul, I won't take any more of your time. So thank you very much, and everyone who's watched this, thank you very much for listening and watching this edition of Talking Local. Please do look out for our other recordings. We've got a number in the can already, and we've got many more coming over the next few months. So thanks again for your time, and have a great day. Bye bye.